The drama in All Elite Wrestling continues, this time from Jon Moxley as he shoots on CM Punk's controversial and now deleted Instagram story in which he alleged that Jon Moxley refused to lose to him and he wasn't cleared at the time of their squash match. In addition to that, Moxley has commented on the entirety of the drama that surrounded AEW over the last 12 months, in addition to revealing he worked for a long amount of time without a contract in AEW whilst he was the interim AEW World Champion. Speaking of reaction, Chris Jericho has also reacted to CM Punk's controversial comments about himself. Mac Jackson is sidelined with a partially torn bicep. We've got an update on how long he could be out of action for. The Men of the Year in AEW, remember them, they could be reuniting soon on AEW television. And a New Japan Pro Wrestling legend has been announced for SuperCard of Honor. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, and the biggest story surrounding engulfing All Elite Wrestling still is the fallout of Brawl Out last year with CM Punk's controversial comments, him shooting about his experiences last year when he returned to the company following his broken foot. Now, for the first time, Jon Moxley has spoken out on the record, shooting about CM Punk, his heat with the former AEW World Champion, his perception of what happened last year, him working without a contract for a long period of time last year, as well as all of the drama engulfing AEW as well. So let's get straight into this, because Moxley is a guy that really doesn't pull many punches when it comes to all of this kind of stuff, and Moxley has had quite a lot to say the least. Right, let's start off. Former AEW World Champion Jon Moxley has given his response and his emotional response to the controversial CM Punk Instagram post from last week. As well as referencing the issues with Tony Khan, Chris Jericho, and Dave Meltzer, Punk called out what he believed was an idea that sucked from Moxley about how their feud should have played out like the storyline from Rocky III. On the latest episode of the podcast hosted by his own wife, Renee Paquette, The Sessions, Jon Moxley said in response to CM Punk's post, quote, "It's effing annoying. Just because somebody said some stupid shit on social media, like that's not news. But it is. It ends up being a thing. I don't want to get dragged into this dumb shit. I could effing unload on a lot of effing people right now, and when I start getting dragged into this shit, it tempts me to do that, but I'm not gonna effing sink to that level. But I will say this, just going to give you like a tidbit of information from my point of view. The entire summer, I was not under contract. No contract, free agent. I was at SummerSlam weekend wrestling effing Desperado, and shit, the day of SummerSlam, effing suplexed him on a bunch of aluminium cans, and shit, cut in half. It was effing dope. I could have walked into SummerSlam that night with the AEW effing bout if I had been so inclined. Nobody knew that because I don't put my stuff out there in the world and let everybody know every effing thing about my business. You know, I was not under contract. Reason being, if you're curious, because I got out of rehab and my contract was coming up, they extended it for the time that I missed. Cool. I'm glad they did actually, because I didn't want to feel like I owed them anything. They extended it a little bit. It was coming up. They were talking to me about it. And the last thing I wanted to do when I got out of rehab, because all they were telling me was basically, logic will tell you don't go back to wrestling because you're going to fall into the same old habits. So I wanted to just like ease back into it and see what life was like on the other side. And the last thing I wanted to do was just hurry up and sign a big long-term commitment, because what if stuff starts to go off the rails? Pretty quickly, I was like, man, actually being sober's awesome. This is fantastic. I'm having so much fun. I was working with my friends, Blackpool Combat Club, me and Brian Danielson, and shit, effing William Regal. This is great. They're talking to me about signing a new thing, and I was like, if everything just stays exactly as it is right now, I'll be here forever. You can pay me in cash in an envelope at the end of the night. I don't give an F. But I can't tell you what I'm going to feel like in 6 months, especially not in 3 years or 5 years. And once I make a commitment, then I will push through injuries. I will push myself too hard. I will do all these things that add up, that leads you down the road or whatever. So I was not in a hurry to make any kind of grand commitments at first. That being said, during this time period, that night that face CM Punk is talking about in Minneapolis the night he came back and was hopping out on one foot, bumping around in a circle or whatever after me and Jericho wrestled. A badass match, by the way. So we were basically talking later about stuff. Now keep in mind, this is my whole point. I basically don't work there. For all intents and purposes, I don't even work here. Tony is not my boss. I don't even have to be in this room. I don't have to do nothing. So even me being in this room and offering and agreeing to a storyline that puts you over at the pay-per-view, if anything, I'm bending over backwards. For Tony and for this dude, that being Punk, and for the company and everybody, I didn't have to. I didn't have to do shit. If anything, I was bending over backwards, so that's it. Now, for context here, CM Punk's original Instagram post once again was as follows, quote, "Sigh, I wasn't cleared to come back to wrestle yet. The plan was to wrestle at the pay-per-view. I sat and listened to Moxley's Rocky 3 idea. I explained how I'd never seen a Rocky movie and thought the idea sucked, but if the boss wanted to do it, whatever. He said he wouldn't lose to me. I'd never experienced someone refusing to lose to me. I just laughed. I asked Tony if this is what he wanted. He said yes. He's the boss, so I said okay, but I need to be cleared first. They kept saying it could be a squash, it could just be a squash, so I didn't need to be cleared. I scoffed at that. My health is more important. Dave Meltzer is a liar, Jericho is a liar and a stooge. There were plans, but plans always change, but I'll never put a company above my health ever again." Now, peeling back from that, so that's Moxley's experience with Punk. That's Moxley's experience of being a free agent during the entirety of that period. As he mentioned, he was wrestling on independent shows SummerSlam weekend as the interim AEW World Champion. He had the AEW World Championship belt. He could have signed with WWE at that time. He could have done a Ric Flair, showed up with the belt, pixelated it or whatever. There could have been actual concerns of what could have happened if Bret Hart jumped to WCW as the WWE champion in 1997. That was a real thing. And to Moxley's point, he's saying, well, I didn't have to be there pitching ideas. I didn't have to do anything. I'm not under contract at the time. Now, obviously, all of that was just one subplot to the overall issues that were going on in AEW at that time that blew up when it came to CM Punk's controversial comments at the post-AEW All Out Media Scrum last year that led to the brawl-out situation with CM Punk, Ace Steel, brawling with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks and others backstage in his locker room that led to suspensions, that led to all of this drama going on. And Moxley has spoken about all of this and just the drama in general that has surrounded All Elite Wrestling in the last 12 months or so. Speaking on the sessions once again hosted by his wife Renee Paquette, Moxley said, quote, "I will say this. I hate to say, I don't think I've ever said anything even remotely negative about AEW, but I will say this. As an observer, it seems like I spent 8 years on the indies, a couple of years in WWE developmental, spent like 8 years in WWE. I have never seen so much bullshit drama in one place in my entire effing life. I hate to say that. I don't know if it's because the age of social media and stuff gets blown out of proportion, like one person posts one stupid effing drunk tweet and all of a sudden it's all everybody wants to talk about. We're sitting up here doing a podcast. You know what we're not talking about? We're not talking about the effing stellar match for Kingo and Kenny Omega just had, or the cool stuff going on in AEW, cool shows happening. We're not talking about this great pay-per-view we just had. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about some bullshit. Let me be clear. The vast majority of people there don't cause any effing trouble or any BS, but they're getting sucked down into this stuff like everybody else, into the muck. There's plenty of people who just want to get better and perform and effing just do this job, man. It's the best job in the world. And that's pretty damning stuff. Once again, I think it's worth repeating this with Moxley saying he's never said anything negative about AEW, but this is the key thing here. Once again, quote, "As an observer, it seems like I spent 8 years on the indies, a couple of years in WWE developmental, spent like 8 years in WWE. I have never seen so much BS drama in one place in my entire effing life. I hate to say that." And Moxley's been there since the beginning in 2019, but let's be honest, that's only 4 years. And he's seen so much drama, and he might just be talking about the last 12 months. Now, Chris Jericho has also responded to a fan talking about CM Punk's comments recently on his Instagram story. After a fan mused via comment on Twitter that Punk says you snaked your way into a leadership role with AEW, the Ocho had a firm response. Jericho responded, quote, not what he said at all. And by the way, go F your ass. PP. Now, for the sake of clarity, Jericho is correct, at least in the first half of his comments. In the since deleted Instagram story by CM Punk, Punk referred to Jericho as a liar and a stooge rather than a snake. While Jericho has been publicly choosing his words rather carefully regarding Brawlout and all of the ensuing drama, certainly Jon Moxley is not. Moxley is now on the record, and again, it's just more drama enveloping AEW at the moment. Now, before Moxley went on the record, and it must be said, the full episode actually of the time of recording isn't out. These are quotes that have come out from it, and maybe more will come out later on this evening. If so, we'll cover that tomorrow, or maybe as the quotes come out. But certainly damning stuff as well at the time. What is quite interesting too is that Moxley seemingly is confirming that he and CM Punk have heat. It had been reported, and certainly after Punk's post last week kind of confirmed that Punk and Moxley had some major heat going on because of what happened last year. PW Torch has now reported on the feeling in the AEW locker room on the possibility of a return for CM Punk, saying, quote, for one, Jon Moxley and CM Punk do not like each other that much. Anybody I asked around will say that, and it's very clear. There's a tension to a degree. Certainly, they're not in a position now where anyone would predict that they would want to work together or they would even feel comfortable working together on a promo or whatever. Beyond Moxley, Wade Keller went on to say, from what I can gather, the sentiment is that he's just not welcome back. The wrestlers don't want him back. The majority of wrestlers don't want him back. I would go as far as even saying that my sources are saying that the mass majority of wrestlers don't want him back. One person said maybe one or two of the top third of the roster wants him back in the top half. And then there are some younger guys who liked him. In terms of the top stars, the politics are not terribly among the top guys. That's some tension among the top guys, but it's mostly Punk doesn't get along with Hangman. Punk doesn't get along with Moxley. Punk doesn't get along with Kenny. Punk doesn't get along with the Bucks. Punk doesn't get along with MJF. Actually, I'm not sure on the MJF thing, but I think the way things went down, even that situation, it's not as strong as it once was. Keller would note that Moxley and Jericho really like each other, and there are other top wrestlers who share a relationship anywhere between peaceful coexistence and really getting along, though Punk was an exception, stating, Punk is the exception to that right now. Him going off on Instagram really hurt the chances of him being welcomed back. One wrestler I talked to outright said it might not matter what the wrestlers think. If Tony Khan wants Punk back, Punk might be brought back. Keller would go on to express the feeling that there would be strong pushback among top AEW talent if Tony Khan tried to bring CM Punk back at this stage. He would go on to say that it was a difficult situation before the Instagram post, but it now is a much more difficult situation. And some people, the conspiracy theorists, maybe would come to the conclusion that that was kind of the point. Now, one of the person involved in all of this beef with CM Punk is Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks of the Elite. And AEW Executive Vice President Matt Jackson has reportedly suffered a legitimate injury and is expected to be out of action for quite a while. According to Brian Alvarez on Wrestling Observer Radio, Jackson suffered the injury said to be a partially torn bicep early on in the three-way trios match in Winnipeg on March 15 between the Elite, the Jericho Appreciation Society, and the House of Black. A week later, so last week, AEW Dynamite began with the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, being taken away in an ambulance after seemingly being attacked by the Blackpool Combat Club. It seems like not only was this part of the ongoing storyline involving Kenny Omega and Adam Page, but there was actually a legitimate reason for the Bucks, Matt specifically, to be written off of TV. On Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer added, what I heard is that he opted not to get surgery, so he's hopeful of being back quicker. Surgery, you're probably looking at 7 months. The deal that they did on last week's show with the ambulance and everything, we all thought it was a brilliant show-long storyline, and it worked, but the reason they did it was to cover for Matt being gone for a while. So seemingly, as Don Callis said on the show, Matt Jackson certainly, we don't know about Nick, could be off TV for a real long period of time. Speaking of tag teams, an AEW star may have teased a surprise tag team reunion in a photo they recently posted on social media. Since losing the TNT Championship to Wardlow in July 2022, Scorpio Sky hasn't been seen on AEW television. Previous reports had noted that Sky had recovered from a leg injury and was cleared to compete, yet Created had nothing for the former two-time AEW TNT Champion and AEW World Tag Team Champion. It was also recently reported that Scorpio Sky hasn't been at AEW shows in months and has scarcely been seen at shows since his loss in July. While AEW Creative may have nothing for Scorpio right now, he did post an image to his Twitter account, which will hopefully give fans some hope. In the image, Sky is sitting beside fellow AEW roster member Ethan Page. The pair were previously known as the Men of the Year team and were managed by Dan Lambert after their debut as a team in March 2021. Page is currently a member of the firm, led by Stokely Hathaway, which includes Lee Moriarty, Big Bill, Isaiah Cassidy, and Matt Hardy. With Hathaway losing his match against Hook, Page has vowed to avenge the loss in the future, so maybe Scorpio Sky gets involved in that in the future. Finally, a big announcement has been made regarding SuperCard of Honor, which is going to be taking place this weekend. A huge ROH Pure Championship match has now been confirmed for SuperCard of Honor, with Wheeler Yuta set to face a popular Japanese star. At the March 31st event, Yuta will defend his gold against Kachusori Shibata. Yuta notably issued a challenge to Shibata on the March 16 episode of Ring of Honor Television after defeating New Japan Pro Wrestling star Clark Connors. Connors was notably trained by Shibata, who currently serves as the head of the head trainer at the New Japan LA dojo. Tony Khan has now taken to Twitter to reveal that Shibata has accepted Yuta's challenge and will face him with the title on the line at SuperCard of Honor. The bout will be Shibata's fourth bout since returning to the ring in 2021. After Shibata's serious head injury in 2017, he stepped away from the ring for 4 years before making his surprise in-ring return at the October 2021 G1 Climax event, facing Zack Sabre Jr. in a UWF Rules bout. He returned to the ring in January 2022 to face Ren Narita at New Japan Wrestle Kingdom 16. Shibata made his AEW in-ring debut in November, unsuccessfully challenging for Orange Cassidy's All-Atlantic Championship on an episode of Rampage. He most recently wrestled on the December 2022 IGF Inoki Bombayi Garajima card, defeating Tom Lawler in a UWF Rules bout. But this one is going to be a pure Rules bout at SuperCard of Honor, so really excited to see that. So there you go, guys. It's the latest AEW/Ring of Honor news for you. Be sure to smash the like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.